Kanha eventually started reaching out to her sister-in-law, sending private messages to check in and see how she was doing. At first, the sister-in-law responded casually, but things took a turn when Kanha's messages became increasingly odd and started to hint at more adult topics. Eventually, the sister-in-law stopped replying altogether. Hey there! Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into another shocking real-life story from this world. This time, the tale comes from the city of Kampot, Cambodia. It's about a wife who becomes completely obsessed with her young, handsome brother-in-law. She goes to extreme lengths to try and turn her twisted desires into reality. And, unfortunately, things spiral out of control, leading to a terrible incident. What exactly happened in this case? Let's take a closer look and discuss the full story. Stay tuned. Before we jump into today's story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to share this story with your friends. The more, the merrier. Now, let's get into it. This story is about a woman named Kanha. Born in 1980, she worked as an accountant and was also involved in a financial company, a sort of people's credit institution. In 2008, Kanha met Phairon, a man 5 years younger than her. They hit it off right away, and by the end of 2009, they decided to get married. Their marriage seemed perfect at first, happy, no major issues, and in 2011, they welcomed their son, followed by a daughter in 2014. The family lived in Kampot City, Cambodia, and from the outside, it looked like they were doing really well. Phairon worked as a programmer for a tech company and even had an office in the city center. After their second child was born, he started working from home since his job could be done anywhere with an internet connection. But, of course, things weren't as picture-perfect as they appeared. After the birth of their daughter, Kanha's relationship with her husband, Phairon, quickly began to sour. She started falling into bad habits, drinking, gambling, and spending more time away from home, hanging out at bars with friends. She began asking her husband for money more frequently, telling him that her salary was delayed because of some issues at work. However, Phairon started to get suspicious. Her coworkers often asked about her, and there were a few occasions when debt collectors showed up at their door, claiming that Kanha owed money. Phairon didn't believe her, though. Every time he asked, Kanha would insist it was just a misunderstanding. She'd tell him that the debt collectors were actually after a friend of hers who owed her money but had run off, leaving Kanha as the guarantor. But the more this situation dragged on, the more Phairon began to worry. Kanha's drinking and gambling habits only got worse, and even though he suspected something was off with her finances, he didn't feel brave enough to confront her. Kanha had a fiery temper and was quick to pick fights. To make it short, in 2015, Phairon's younger brother, Pitch, lost his wife in a work accident. Pitch didn't have any kids, but his late wife came from a wealthy family, and she left him a pretty sizable inheritance. Now, Pitch was younger than Kanha, and over time, she started noticing him more and more. Kanha, being the bold type, began texting him privately, asking how he was doing. At first, Pitch responded casually, but things quickly took a strange turn when Kanha's messages started getting a bit too personal. Things that definitely went beyond simple conversation. After that, Pitch decided to stop replying. Now, here's some context. Pitch and Kanha both went to the same college, and Kanha always thought Pitch was way better looking than her husband, Phairon. According to Kanha, Pitch had a much more muscular body and a face that could stop traffic. She thought any woman who saw him would probably want to be carried away by him. But the real kicker, after becoming a widower, Pitch had somehow become even more handsome, almost like his attractiveness had multiplied overnight. Kanha found herself drawn to him more than ever. Meanwhile, her marriage to Phairon was starting to feel pretty stale. He wasn't home much, and when he was, he looked exhausted. Kanha thought he looked dull, tired, and honestly just not very attractive anymore. So, naturally, she started feeling bored with him. And that's when the visits to Pitch's house started happening more often. She'd tell Phairon that she was just checking in on him, but it was clear she was spending a lot more time with her brother-in-law than her husband. But here's the thing, Pitch wasn't comfortable with the situation. It wasn't exactly a good look for him to have his married sister-in-law constantly showing up at his place, especially so soon after his wife's death. Eventually, Pitch talked to Phi Run about it, urging him to pay more attention to his wife, to stop focusing so much on work, and to make sure she felt loved and cared for. Phi Run, worried about losing her, decided to make some changes. He started coming home earlier, greeting Kanha warmly, and even bringing her favorite snacks. But here's the sad part. Kanha didn't respond. She was numb. The changes Phi Run made didn't really move her. She was no longer in love with him. All that desire for him was gone, and she started thinking about divorce. Mostly because she was fantasizing about being with Pitch, the guy she now found irresistible, more handsome, more powerful, and much more exciting. It seemed like Kanha's obsession with Pitch was only getting stronger. Every time Pitch walked out to go to work, the way he moved, the way he carried himself, she couldn't help but watch him. The way he smiled at her felt like he was silently inviting her to run away with him, to start a new life together. And Kanha? Well, she couldn't resist it anymore. Just the thought of the handsome widower gave her a headache. She started talking to her friends, wondering if it would be okay to marry her brother-in-law if she divorced Phi Run. Most of them said it was possible, but it would be seen as disgraceful by the family. They also pointed out that the sister-in-law would probably turn him down, unless the husband passed away first. It was one of those down-the-bed things, as they put it. Kanha's friends also told her that, according to her religion, it was okay to marry a brother-in-law if the husband was dead, or if they were officially divorced. Kanha thought about all of this, and it got her thinking even more. She started Googling, researching if it was really permissible to marry a sister-in-law. The more she looked into it, the more she convinced herself that it was acceptable in her faith. But then she thought about it. If Phi Run was still alive, Pitch would probably never want to marry her. It would just be too awkward. That's when the thought crossed her mind. What if Phi Run was no longer in the picture? If her husband was out of the way, she could have Pitch all to herself. So she started researching more. She spent hours reading up on ways to get rid of someone, how to leave no trace, how to make a body disappear. Anything that could help her get what she wanted without anyone finding out. At the same time, things at home were spiraling out of control. The debt collectors kept showing up, and Kanha's gambling problem wasn't getting any better. People were constantly coming to collect the money she owed. This put Phi Run on edge. One day, he finally decided to call Kanha's workplace to find out what was really going on. He had heard rumors, and he was getting desperate for answers. He asked if it was true that she had debts and that she was being used as collateral. And was it true that the company was in a financial crisis because her salary had been delayed? The response he got shocked him. The office told him that Kanha had actually been fired 2 months ago for embezzling company funds and scamming clients. They said she was required to pay back the money she had stolen. This revelation hit Phi Run hard. He had no idea how deep Kanha's problems ran, and it made him realize just how much he didn't know about the woman he was married to. Phi Run was absolutely stunned when he found out the truth. He was so shocked that he couldn't even think straight. Then, on the morning of July 23, 2016, at around 10 a.m., Kanha came home to find her husband waiting for her in bed. At first, Phi Run joked with her, teasing her about how they hadn't been intimate in nearly a year. But Kanha brushed him off, claiming she was too tired from work. That's when things took a turn. She suddenly snapped, accusing him of being fired from his job 2 months ago for embezzling money. That was the last straw for her. Feeling cornered and exposed, Kanha lost it. She snapped, yelling at him for talking too much, and then hit him. She stormed into the living room, with Phi Run trailing behind her. They started arguing again, but this time the argument turned violent. In a fit of rage, Kanha grabbed Phi Run by the neck, squeezing hard. But Phi Run had finally reached his breaking point. He fought back, landing a hit on her. Kanha, now completely furious, ran to the kitchen, grabbed a fruit knife, and came back to attack him. She struck his head repeatedly until he fell unconscious. In that moment, with Phi Run lying still, Kanha decided to go through with her plan to make him disappear. Her mind was set on marrying Pitch, and she thought this would be the way to make it happen. She dragged her husband's limp body to the back garden, grabbed a large plastic garbage bag, and stuffed him inside. Using a hoe, she started digging a hole big enough to fit him. Not too deep, just enough to hide the body. But as she was about to bury him, Fai-run stirred, groaning and calling her name. Kan-ha froze in panic. She quickly covered the hole with soil, hoping no one would notice what she had done. What Kan-ha didn't know was that Fai-run had already told his parents everything. The gambling, the debt, and how Kan-ha had been acting so flirtatiously with Pitch. He had shared how uncomfortable he felt about her constant compliments toward his brother. So when Fai-run went missing for a few days, his parents became worried and decided to report it to the police. They also made sure to share the troubling details about Kan-ha's behavior and her growing debts. At first, Kan-ha told everyone that Fai-run was out of town for work. Then she changed her story, saying he was at an event with an old college friend. But the family wasn't buying it. They knew something wasn't right because Fai-run would never just disappear without at least checking in. He was always in touch, even when he was away for work. Plus, he'd always leave the kids with his mom or ask for prayers if he was gone for a while. This time, though, there was no communication, and that raised alarms. 2 days later, the police decided to search Kan-ha's house. That's when they found something suspicious. A mound of dirt in the backyard that looked freshly dug. Using a scraping machine, they uncovered Fai-run's body in the shallow hole. They also found red stains on the wall, which seemed to match the injuries he'd sustained from the knife attack. Kan-ha had no words to explain herself when the police confronted her. She just went silent. As the investigation progressed, the evidence against Kan-ha kept piling up. They found traces of Fai-run's blood on the walls and sofa inside the house. But perhaps the most damning piece of evidence was Kan-ha's search history. The police uncovered Google searches like how to get rid of someone without getting caught, how to marry a sister-in-law, and best places to take someone's life. There were even searches about faking Fai-run's disappearance to make it look like he'd taken his own life. It was clear from the evidence that Kan-ha had been planning this for a while. The police also found only her DNA and fingerprints all over the house, leaving her with no choice but to confess. She admitted to everything, explaining that she'd killed Fai-run because her desire for him had completely faded. Her love for him was gone, replaced by an intense passion for her handsome brother-in-law, Pitch. She couldn't deny that every time Pitch visited, she couldn't help but act out of character. The way he carried himself, his muscular build, and even his Adam's apple. Everything about him drove her wild. Kan-ha admitted that her obsession with Pitch wasn't just about love. She also saw the opportunity to secure a future with someone who had inherited a lot of money from his late wife. The inheritance could help pay off the debts she had racked up from her gambling addiction. To make a long story short, it turns out that Kan-ha, who was supposed to be a financial advisor, had scammed at least 34 of her clients. They all reported her to the police for various forms of fraud. One of her clients even had his house seized by Kan-ha, who mortgaged it and used the money to cover her gambling debts. As a result, that client was evicted from his own home. The police later found that Kan-ha had embezzled a total of 3 billion IDR from these 34 clients, not even counting the money she swindled from her sister-in-law and father-in-law, which was never fully accounted for. During her trial at the Kampot City High Court, Kan-ha finally confessed to her crimes in an attempt to lessen her punishment. The investigation revealed a shocking detail. Fai-run, her husband, had still been alive when she buried him in the shallow grave with the plastic garbage bag. Doctors later confirmed that he died from suffocation, meaning he was buried alive. In April 2017, the court sentenced Kan-ha to 25 years in prison for the murder of Fai-run. Then, in August 2018, her trial for defrauding her clients took place. To settle part of her debt, Kan-ha's father had to sell their house and farmland in the village, but there was still more to be paid. In the end, Kan-ha received an additional 5-year sentence for fraud and embezzlement. Fai-run's parents were granted full custody of their 2 children, and Kan-ha was permanently banned from seeing them. What lessons can we learn from this story?